you're basically recreating from an innovative standpoint the funeral industry, right? You have a business, Irene Cremations, Irene EIRENE cremations.com, and you're creating a new space, and I want to talk about that because I think a lot of companies right now are trying to figure out, and a lot of people right now are trying to figure out what is the new space for fill in the blank. And so for anybody who is thinking like that, what 3 recommendations would you give them on how to begin to think and or execute differently today versus yesterday?
So, I think a lot of thinking about how to disrupt an industry is understanding that industry. A lot of people dive into certain industries going, I'm going to change it, but they don't know anything about it. Not that I knew much about the funeral space. What I did and what I have learned from working on many different businesses is either you understand the business in depth or you work with a co-founder that understands it in depth, or you have some advantage in that industry. So, I started thinking about the death sector when I was traveling in Japan and seeing how Japanese companies are doing stuff there. And I was fascinated. So I understood that there is a need for this in North America. But I didn't have any relationship with the death sector. And then I met my co-founder, and her father's a funeral director. So there it was just like, okay, let's try to understand what are the missing pieces in this industry and where we can exploit it. So definitely there's this idea of product market fit that everyone talks about, but there's also founder market fit. And you have to become that founder that can fit in that market, whether through, learning everything about the industry while working in it, or working with someone that understands that industry and learning through osmosis. I think a good example is like Elon Musk, when he talked about SpaceX. Elon Musk didn't sit there and become a rocket scientist. He understood the mechanics of how to build rockets, but then he hired the right people that understood that market. And so that's definitely number one. Number 2 is understanding, and this comes with understanding the market, is your solution too early or too late? A lot of times people would, and the only way you find that out is you get that solution out ASAP. Very rarely can you sit and ponder on it and just be like, we're too early to the market. And so I would definitely say iterate and get to market fast once you understand the market, in order to be able to see, can this be disruptive? And it sounds funny to say, but you have to think big, but you have to execute something very specific and small. You can't go out and try to build the entire ecosystem, trying to disrupt it. If you look at any big tech company, Google now has Google Ads, Android, and all sorts of stuff. But Google, when they launched with just a search engine. Yes, their ambition was to be disruptive, and they were disruptive with just a search engine, but they didn't do everything that they do now. And so when we launched Irene, the Irene of 3 years ago is fundamentally vastly different than the Irene of now, just because we've been in the market, we understand the market better, and we've been able to disrupt it more.
Yeah. What's number 3?
Number 3, I would say, is try to see. So there is a value to going into the market. So while my co-founder Mallory and I aren't directly from the industry, we have this relationship with the industry through her father. And so what we did was we looked at it from a fresh set of eyes, and we spoke to a whole bunch of people in the industry. It is very important you understand who the players are in the industry and what they're doing, and not just the competitors per se, but the users, and try to understand that research is valuable. And so we spoke to so many people, went to these things called death cafes where people talk about the relationship with death. And we tried to understand, how when people pass away, how do their family members, what do they do? Do they just, walk into a funeral home? And if they do they like doing that? Would they rather just stay at home and make a phone call? And so from the discussions, we actually understood that people didn't want to just go to a funeral home. What they wanted to do, which seems so obvious, is focus on their family. And so with Irene, what we designed was we said, look, we're an online funeral home. You can call us 24/7. at 3 a.m. in the morning, you can give us a call and someone will be there. We're always there. We'll take care of your loved one, and you can go back to taking care of your family and making sure, they're okay, and the whole process around that.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. It's so interesting. I mean, what you're talking about is listening to the market, right?
Absolutely.
Don't spend too much time planning. You got to get into the market, talk to the people, listen to the people, get the feedback, hear the
Yeah.
feedback. I think that's so important.